So part of my story this week is it has to do with the Chamber of Commerce and the soccer team and how to do things. And we'll see Chesterton's fence and the world of agreements and trading spaces. So, our vice president of the Soccer Association put her name into the hat to be president. I endorsed her. We voted her in. I wrote her a letter of recommendation to the Chamber of Commerce in order to allow her to take their leadership development course. I thought that would be good. I said we'll do that. And when you're there, make sure that you are using that as a way to tell our story, to tell our brand that you've been working on so hard with our strategic plan. So she's definitely a leader in progress. She's a work in progress. So I decided, instead of just mailing it in, they didn't have an electronic letter of reference system, but they would accept it mailed in. So I said, that's odd, but so I wrote it up and I said, well, let me just drop it off at the office. It's on the way into work. So I walk in there and the executive assistant, well, would you like to talk to the CEO? I said, hey, I guess. It turns out that was her second day on the job. So what became sort of just dropping off a letter became an hour-long developmental exercise in how did you get here and what do you got going on? And it was a true storytelling circle instantly of two people. And I told her about what we were doing and how this builds communities of practice based on safety, trust, truth, and opportunity, and why that be a powerful message for young business leaders in the Chamber of Commerce, and that I was available to do that with them. So there's a whole line of business operating out of that chance meeting, that discussion to explore that space. So I shared that story with my little assistant coach, who's a master's student at St. Mary's University where I'm teaching, and she's a professional soccer player, and she said, hey, Coach, how would you apply those principles that I see you using with these fourth graders in the creativity to a college team that was having trouble winning games and self-doubting and depressed and whatnot? So I said, well, it's the big five. I said, you're building a culture that our big five are how we're going to judge ourselves. Play hard, have fun, support the team, love the game, respect the other team, and ref. And that I reinforce that at every practice, before and after. I do that at every game, and we grade ourselves in the huddle at halftime with a letter grade, and then we pick a couple things that we can do better in the second half, and then I ask the kids, did we do those things? Then we are winners. And if we do those things, then we're going to beat these guys, if not today, then someday. Or not, but that's how we're going to do it, because we're going to play the way we play. That's who we are. We're playing the Thunder way. Because I talked to her about the fourth grade creativity protocol of the Fletcher treatment, which we're going through. And the way the Fletcher treatment works with fourth graders is you ask them for a set of typical problems, then you ask them in a large group to individually come up with one thing you could do that would be better. And if that doesn't work, what would you do next? And that's called the resilience solution. And what it does is not only exposes the kids to being creative, but it also gets them in the mindset that, well, if this doesn't work, then I just do the next thing, and you just keep going. So we're doing that at the soccer camp now. And one of our little signatures that you fall down 6 times, get up 7. So we're trying to build that resilience mindset and combine it with creativity. It turns out in child education psychology that one of the ways that you build resilience is to continue to find ways to keep going, which means that you got to have risk management so that you always have capital, so that no decision you make takes you out of the game. So there's a rule that you don't break there, which has to do with exposure to the trade. Well, I was thinking about that, and my real story today. Well, so anyway, my coach she was going to coach our high school team, but she just got an invitation to go coach at a junior college in Arizona because her former college coach was doing that and is moving up to be the athletic director and wants to hire her, and that's her dream job. And she was worried about, well, I just said that I was going to coach the high school team for the club, and I don't want to go back. I don't want to disappoint the girls. I said, well, I understand your situation, and you've got to figure out what it is you're going to do and talk to the girls and why you want to make the decision you want to make. I said, are you giving them the power to keep you from taking your dream job? That's a choice. So we talked through that, and I said, I think they will understand, because I'm not going to let you not take this job. Because I'm coach the team if you are going to Arizona, and you're only going for a year, so you'll come back after a year. You're on loan to Arizona. And so I think that's what she's going to do. So she was asking me how to basically apply what I do for the little kids to a college team. So it's going to work, because it has to do with the human condition. So I say all that to simply say this, that 3 years ago when we started doing the True Story Circles, we had the first one we formed, we came up with a set of rules. So these were the rules of the circle, and so we're not going to break the rules. And that didn't really settle well with everybody, because it was sort of, a rule is imposed by external authority, and you have to comply with that. And so we said, well, what should we call them? Should we call them guidelines? Somebody suggested. And I said, no, we're not going to call them guidelines, because a guideline suggests that it's okay with the rest of us for you to not follow that guideline if you just think that's something that you don't have to do, and then you're going to do something that violates the guidelines in our space, and that's not what we want. But we don't want to call it rules, so Mike Threebear suggested the word agreement. And this is how we're operating. And I'd like you to think of this as if you have multiple rule sets and different ways in which you might trade that are context dependent, that just think of each one of those as a soap bubble in which you're going to trade according to a set of agreements that you've decided on. That in this space, this fragile soap bubble, which can still float, and so it's a thing, and in that space, I'm going to follow these agreements. The instant you decide to not abide by that agreement, that space is gone. And everything that's in there is free to leave instantly before you take the action to not follow the agreement. The instant you've decided that, the intention disappears and that soap bubble is gone. So whatever it is you're going to do, go ahead and do it. You're just not doing it in the space that you agreed to set up and follow those agreements. Now, if it's yourself, you can negotiate with yourself about how fast you want to establish and then disestablish those little agreement spaces. But if you're in an agreement space with other people, you are not the kind of person that violates that agreement in that space without first telling them that that space no longer is established, or that's the kind of person you are. Are you the kind of person that will violate agreement with somebody else in a space that you, as a free-willed person, agreed to establish with them, trusting that they were going to abide by those agreements or give you warning ahead of time? Is that, well, what kind of person are you? You just decide that, and you are free to decide to be whoever you're going to be, because that's who you're going to be. So there's something really powerful about the word agreements, and an agreement space and a true storytelling space of free people who have made agreements to behave in certain ways about the conduct of the behavior in that space. And the precondition of seizing opportunities, I want to take this action because of reasons. Okay, opportunity. Is that opportunity based on truth? Is there a real thing there, or were we deceived? I don't know. So the to determine if it's an opportunity I want to act on, I got to establish, is there truth in it? And before I can establish the truth, I got to have trust that the things that I'm about to do and study and that I hear and the evidence I'm gathered and the evidence that other people have given me is based on trust. So when you tell me things, I trust that to be true, so I can act on the opportunity, which means I've got to have a safe space first in order to develop trust, in order to allow truth to emerge out of this fog, the unnatural condition of 100% truth. So that is a learned process, and it is a reciprocal relationship. So as I think about trading according to rules, I think about it as being in a very fragile space within which those agreements are in place, and then I can trade according to those agreements. And the instant I decide I am not going to do that, that space is gone. I cannot take the trade under those conditions because of the impact on other people who trusted me to be truthful about my intention to live up to those agreements. Now, they're going to judge me on the basis of how I behave in the agreement space. Am I the kind of person that tells the truth? Am I the kind of person that can be trusted to do what I say? How important is that to you and to who you are as a person? You'd make that decision. So I would think, as I'm negotiating through the parts of myself with when am I going to follow the rules and when am I going to not follow the rules, if I have variations on that theme, all I'm really doing, and this is fine, is I'm establishing a space in which I'm going to strictly follow these rules no matter what. Or I'm going to establish a temporary soap bubble space of agreement in which I'm going to have these methods of adapting the rules, or trading on the fly, or saying things that were not part of the plan, but which in a moment I'm going to make a plan and trade it according to that agreement in that space. So you can establish any number of those virtual spaces as you want, but every one of them, in my view, should be aligned with a set of agreements that are ironclad, that this space is established to trade in a certain way according to these agreements, and that if my intention is not to trade in that way, then you're not in that space. You are in a different space. Do what you want with the spaces that you set up, because in the digital virtual world, there's an infinite number of those. But don't ever kid yourself that there's not an agreement about that space. And if you're in a space and you're trading and you don't have those agreements firmly in mind, I'm wondering what you're doing. Not a serious person. So make a decision about what agreements are in force and your commitment to live up to them. Then you can make a decision about who to let into your trading space and what agreements you're going to have, but you should be very clear and truthful about what they are and what the consequences are of behaviors. It's just, hey, I'm not going to judge you. I'm just not going to be in that trusted space with you ever again under those conditions because I have new information, that kind of stuff. So as you negotiate through your own personal team of parts and voices and responsibilities and obligations, and you're sorting all that calculus out, I really think there's a lot of power in the word of agreements and temporary spaces, virtual. Those things are established for as long as the agreements are holding. When those agreements are no longer holding, that space is instantly gone in that moment. Now, in the future, I mean, who knows what happens? All I know is that in the present, that agreement space is no longer there, and it's null and void. So try thinking of those values. I'm going to try to think of those values in that framework of reference as I think about what rules I'm following, in what system, for what purpose, with whom on my team, and with what obligations I take those agreements to hold. Aho.